Officer Ryan Cole had heard a lot of things in 2 years on the force. Nothing had ever stopped his hands cold the way those words did. The barefoot child standing in the middle of Route 9 wasn't asking for help. He was commanding it. 8 years old, bleeding from a cut above his left eye, shaking so hard his teeth rattled in the frozen Montana air. Behind him, nothing but dark trees and wind. Ryan looked at Rex. Rex was already out of the car. If this story moves something in you, subscribe to this channel and follow every part until the end. Drop your city in the comments right now. I want to see how far this story travels. Rex smelled the boy before Ryan saw him. That was how it always worked between them. 3 years of patrol in Harlow Creek, Montana, and Ryan Cole had learned to trust the German Shepherd's instincts, the way other men trusted their own heartbeat. When Rex went from half asleep to rigid and alert in the passenger seat, hackles raised, amber eyes fixed on the tree line to the right of Route 9, Ryan's foot was already coming off the accelerator. "What do you got, boy?" Rex didn't answer. He never did in words, but his low growl said everything. Ryan slowed the patrol car to a crawl, his high beams cutting pale light through the storm. Wind off the mountains had been hammering Harlow Creek since sundown, and the road was empty in both directions, the way it always was past 10 on the Tuesday in February. Nothing moved in the dark. Nothing Ryan could see. Then the boy stepped out of the trees. He was small, too small for what he was carrying in his face. He walked straight at the headlights with both arms raised above his head, not waving, just holding them up like he was surrendering to something larger than himself. His feet were bare. No shoes, no socks, just raw skin on frozen asphalt. His red hoodie was torn at the collar and too thin for the temperature, and his sandy blonde hair was plastered to his forehead with either sweat or melted snow, or both. Ryan threw the car into park and was out the door before it fully stopped. Hey, easy, son, I got you." The boy's knees buckled 2 feet from him. Ryan caught him under the arms before he hit the ground, and what he felt when he grabbed hold of those small shoulders nearly took the breath out of him. The child was trembling so violently it felt like holding something electric. His skin was ice. "Please, mister." The boy's voice cracked open. "They broke her. She can't breathe anymore." Who can't breathe?" "My mom." His eyes found Ryan's and locked on. "She's in the shed. He hurt her bad. She wasn't moving when I ran." Ryan looked over the boy's head toward the tree line. Rex had already jumped out of the car and was circling the child with his nose low to the ground, ears back, every muscle tuned to something beyond the range of human senses. The dog stopped, lifted his head, looked at Ryan with those amber eyes. "Move, right now." "Okay." Ryan kept his voice steady, the way they taught him at the academy, the way he had practiced in the mirror before his first shift when his hands wouldn't stop shaking. "What's your name?" "Lucas Ward." "All right, Lucas. I'm Officer Cole. That's Rex. He's going to help us." He lifted the boy into his arms, the child weightless in a way that alarmed him, and carried him to the patrol car. "Can you tell me where she is?" "Back through the trees." Lucas grabbed Ryan's sleeve. "Don't take long. Please, don't take long." "I won't." He settled Lucas into the back seat and cranked the heat to maximum. Rex jumped in beside the boy without being asked, pressing his large body against Lucas's side like a furnace. Lucas grabbed a fistful of the dog's fur with both hands, and the trembling slowed by the smallest degree. Ryan grabbed his radio. Static. He tried the repeater channel. More static. The mountains were eating his signal, same as they did every bad storm. He was alone. No backup, no dispatcher. Just him and Rex, and a barefoot boy who had run through frozen woods in the dark. He looked at Lucas in the rearview mirror. "How far?" 10 minutes through the path. There's a dirt road off County 12 that goes to the back of the property. That's faster." The boy wiped his nose on his sleeve. "He hit her with a bottle. Then the other men started." "What other men?" Lucas hesitated. His fingers tightened in Rex's fur. "There were 3 of them. They came with Dale." "Dale is your mom's boyfriend?" "Yes, sir." The word came out practiced, like someone had trained him to be polite, even when the world was falling apart around him. "Dale Voss. He came back different tonight. Loud." He told her she had talked to someone, and she needed to answer for it. Ryan's jaw set. He'd heard that language before, that particular phrasing. Needed to answer for it. It wasn't the language of a drunk man in a domestic fight. It was the language of someone protecting something. "Did you hear what they were talking about? What they said she talked about?" Lucas shook his head. "Just that she made a mistake, and now there were consequences." He looked down at Rex. "He always uses big words when he's the most scared. Mom told me that once." Ryan turned onto County 12 and pushed the patrol car faster than the ice justified. Rex braced himself against the seat without complaint. The turnoff was easy to miss. A gap in the tree line with 2 ruts of packed dirt that disappeared into the dark. Ryan took it without slowing, the undercarriage scraping frozen ground. Lucas leaned forward between the front seats. "Straight ahead. The light is the grain building. The shed is behind it to the left." Ryan could already see it, a dim orange glow from a single security lamp mounted on a rusted grain facility, the kind of structure that had been dead for 15 years but still managed to hold itself upright through Montana winters through sheer stubbornness. Beyond it, a wooden shed, door hanging open, no light inside. He stopped the car 30 yards out and cut the headlights. "Lucas, listen to me very carefully." He turned in his seat to face the boy. "You stay in this car. You lock the doors when I get out. You don't open them for anyone except me. Do you understand?" Lucas looked at the shed. His face was doing something complicated. "Do you understand, son?" "Yes, sir." His voice was barely above a whisper. "Rex is going to come with me." Ryan looked at the dog, who was already alert, already repositioned, already reading the situation. "But you've got my word. I'm coming back out." He got out of the car into the cold and moved fast across the frozen ground toward the shed with Rex at his left heel. The wind covered the sound of their approach. The shed door moved slightly in the gusts, and from somewhere inside came a sound that Ryan would not describe to anyone afterward, because some sounds didn't belong in words. He pushed the door fully open and went in. Claire Ward was on the floor in the far corner, her back against the wall of the shed, her legs bent at an angle that told him she hadn't moved herself there. She was conscious, but barely. Her dark hair hung across her face, and her left eye was swollen fully shut. She wore a diner uniform, the kind with a name tag on the chest, and the name tag was broken at the pin like someone had grabbed it. She looked at Ryan when he entered, and the look on her face was not relief. It was fear. She thought he might be one of them. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Ryan Cole, Harlow Creek PD. You're safe. Lucas sent me." Something broke open in her expression at her son's name. Her mouth moved before sound came out. "He got out?" "He ran to Route 9. He flagged me down. He's in my car. He's okay." A sound came out of Claire Ward then that Ryan had no word for. Not quite crying. Something deeper than crying. He knelt beside her and checked her pulse. Fast and weak. He ran his hands carefully along her sides, and she winced hard at the left rib cage. He didn't push further. "Can you breathe normally?" "Hurts," she managed. "Feels like something's broken." Probably is. Don't try to move. He unzipped his patrol jacket and put it around her shoulders. Help is coming. I need you to stay with me, all right? Stay awake. Rex moved past them both. That was when Ryan noticed it. The dog had gone to the back corner of the shed, away from Claire, away from the broken glass and the spilled whiskey soaking into the dirt floor. He was standing completely still, with his nose pointed at the ground, not tracking, not alerting for a person, sitting the way he only sat when he'd found something that mattered. Ryan crossed to him. He crouched down. He used his flashlight. A rotted floorboard in the far corner had been disturbed. The nails were pulled. The wood was newer on the underside than the top suggested, meaning someone had replaced it recently and aged it intentionally. Ryan pulled it back with his fingers. Beneath it, in a shallow cavity lined with sheet metal, were vacuum-sealed packages stacked in a military-style case. Dozens of them, each one about the size of a hardcover book. The case was stamped with a logo, Voss & Sons Contracting. Ryan sat back on his heels and stared at it. Rex looked up at him. This was not a domestic incident. This had never been a domestic incident. From behind him, Claire's voice came low and strained. "He's going to come back." She was watching the door. "Dale always comes back. You don't understand who he is." Ryan turned to face her. "Then help me understand." She looked at him for a long moment, the calculation moving behind her one open eye. The assessment of whether this was safe, whether this man was real, whether the risk of speaking was smaller than the risk of silence. She took a breath that clearly cost her. "Dale Voss has been moving product through this property for 2 years. Her voice was flat and precise, like she had rehearsed this in her head 1,000 times. "Fentanyl mostly. Packaged in construction supply crates, so the weight looks right on shipping documents. He uses the county contracts his company holds to move trucks across checkpoints without secondary inspection." She paused. "He's not doing it alone." Ryan said nothing. He waited. Claire looked at the door again, then back at him. "Someone inside your department has been letting it happen. I don't know the name. I only know Dale said it once, when he thought I was asleep." Her jaw tightened. "He said if I ever called the police, to think carefully about who would actually answer." The wind hit the shed wall hard enough to shudder the whole structure. Somewhere, outside, Rex had gone silent in a way that was different from his normal quiet. Ryan stood up slowly. His hand moved to his radio out of reflex, then stopped. Think carefully about who would actually answer. He looked down at Claire. He looked at the case with the Voss logo. He looked at his radio. He put the radio back on his belt without keying it. And then, from outside, through the walls of the shed, came the distant sound of a vehicle engine, rolling slow with its headlights off. Ryan didn't move. He stood in the dark of the shed and listened to the engine idle somewhere beyond the tree line, rolling without headlights, moving the way things moved when they didn't want to be seen. Rex was at the door, body rigid, ears forward, every strand of fur along his spine standing at attention. "Is that him?" Ryan kept his voice below the wind. Claire had pushed herself upright against the wall, one arm wrapped around her ribs, her one good eye fixed on the shed door. "I don't know. Could be Dale. Could be one of the others." She swallowed. "They come back to check the supply, sometimes twice a night." Ryan made the decision in under 3 seconds. He crossed to her, helped her to her feet with one arm, and felt her flinch hard against the pain in her side. "Can you walk?" "I can try." "That's all I need." He got her moving toward the door, one arm around her shoulders, Rex falling back into position at his left. They came out of the shed into the dark, and Ryan steered them wide of the grain building, away from the direction the engine sound was coming from, back toward where he'd left the patrol car, in the gap between the trees. The engine cut out. Silence dropped over everything like a held breath. Ryan stopped. Claire stopped. Rex froze beside them and turned his head toward the far side of the grain building where the sound had died. 3 seconds. 4. Then the sound of a truck door opening. 1. Just one door. One person getting out. Ryan got Claire moving again, faster now. When they reached the patrol car, Lucas had his face pressed against the window, and his eyes went huge when he saw his mother. He unlocked the door before Ryan could say anything and threw it open, and Claire made a sound Ryan had never heard from a human being before when her son wrapped both arms around her waist. A sound that was grief and relief and guilt all tangled into one breath. "Baby." She pulled him against her chest with her good arm. "Baby, I told you to stay inside." "I did stay inside. I stayed in the officer's car." Lucas's voice was muffled against her. "You're bleeding again." "I'm okay." "You're not okay, Mom." Ryan got them both into the back seat and closed the door quietly. He moved to the driver's side, keeping low, and checked his mirrors. Nothing yet. But whoever had gotten out of that truck was going to walk into an empty shed in about 40 seconds and find a pried-up floorboard and a missing woman. He needed to move. But he also needed to think. If he drove out on the main dirt road he'd come in on, his headlights would cut straight across the open ground, and anyone standing near that grain building would see them instantly. If he sat still and waited them out, he was betting on a person who ran a fentanyl operation having the patience to give up and leave without searching the property. Neither option was good. Rex settled in the front passenger seat and looked at Ryan with an expression that had always struck him as almost philosophical, like the dog had already worked through the angles and was waiting for his partner to catch up. Ryan started the engine. No headlights. He put it in reverse and backed slowly along the tree line, using the pale edge of the natural light to navigate, 2 miles an hour, barely breathing. In the back seat, Claire had one hand over Lucas's ear, like she could block him from the tension radiating through the car. "Don't talk," Ryan said quietly. "Don't move." For 60 seconds, nobody did. Then the shouting started from the direction of the shed. One voice, then two, sharp and angry. Ryan couldn't make out words over the wind, but the tone was unmistakable. Someone had found the open floorboard. He hit the gas. The patrol car lurched backward onto the county road, and Ryan spun the wheel and got them facing forward and drove without lights for another 30 seconds before finally switching them on and accelerating hard toward town. In the back seat, Lucas exhaled a breath he'd apparently been holding since the shed. "Officer Cole." Claire's voice was low and even. "The name on the case. Voss and Sons. You saw it." "I saw it. That stamp is on every county road contract in this district for the last 3 years. Dale got those contracts through someone in county government. He used to brag about it." She paused. "The contract gave his trucks pre-authorization at every checkpoint between here and the state line. Official county business. Nobody looks twice. Ryan processed that while he drove. 3 years of contracts. Pre-authorized checkpoints. That kind of access didn't come from bribing a clerk. Who approved the contracts?" "I don't know the whole chain, but Dale had a name he used, just a last name. He called him Mercer." She watched Ryan's reaction in the rearview mirror. "You know that name." Ryan kept his eyes on the road. "Captain Mercer runs the Northwest substation. He's been with the department 19 years. The silence that followed was the kind that had weight. "I'm sorry," Claire said quietly, and the way she said it told Ryan she understood exactly what it meant for him. It wasn't just corruption. It was the specific, suffocating betrayal of someone you were supposed to trust with your life. Lucas looked up at his mother. Is that why you said not to call the police? She touched his face. I said to be careful. There's a difference. You said don't trust anyone. I said be careful. Her jaw tightened. Turns out one of them is worth trusting. Ryan said nothing. He just drove. At Harlow Creek's small medical clinic, he got Claire inside and into the hands of the night nurse on duty, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, who took one look at Claire's face and started moving with the efficiency of someone who had seen exactly this kind of damage before and had strong opinions about the men who caused it. Lucas sat on the bench in the waiting area, with Rex lying across his feet. The dog's weight, steady and warm and deliberate. Ryan stepped into the hallway and stood with his back against the wall and his notebook open, and went through everything Claire had told him, point by point. He wrote the name Mercer at the top of the page and stared at it. 19 years. The man had been at every department picnic Ryan had ever attended, had shaken his hand when he made officer, had told him once, in the way that senior cops talk to junior ones, that the secret to this job was knowing which fights were worth having. Ryan looked at the name on the page and felt something cold move through him that had nothing to do with the temperature outside. He pulled out his phone. He scrolled past the department directory, past dispatch, past every number that connected back to the substation, and found a number he had stored 6 months ago after a joint county briefing. County Sheriff Dana Howell. He had never called it before. He stood in the hallway of a small-town clinic at 11:30 at night and dialed it now. She picked up on the second ring. Howell. Sheriff, this is Officer Ryan Cole, Harlow Creek PD. I need to report a situation, and I need to do it outside my chain of command. Tonight. A beat of silence. Then her voice shifted, not warmer, but more precise. Talk to me. He talked. All of it. The boy on the road, the shed, the packages in the false floor, the Voss and Sons case, Claire's statement about the checkpoint access, and the name she had given him. He said it plainly, without hedging, the way you said things when you had made a decision and there was no point softening the edges. When he finished, Dana Howell was quiet for 4 seconds. You still at the clinic? Yes, ma'am. Stay there. Don't call anyone else. Don't log the evidence through your station. I'll have my investigator at your location within the hour, and we'll talk about next steps. Another pause. You did the right thing calling me. I hope so. You'll know for certain once we look at what you found. Keep the family safe until I get there. He hung up and stood in the hallway a moment longer. Through the window in the waiting room door, he could see Lucas with his head resting on Rex's back, the dog completely still, watching the door to the treatment room with those amber eyes. Ryan went back in and sat across from the boy. Lucas looked up at him. Is my mom going to be okay? The nurse says her ribs need imaging. She's got a concussion, but she's strong. Ryan leaned forward with his forearms on his knees. You're the one who figured out the path through the trees, right? The one that comes out on the county road? I've read it 100 times since I was 6. At night? In February? Barefoot? Lucas thought about it. The cold made my feet numb pretty fast. After that, it wasn't so bad. He said it like this was a reasonable observation about temperature management. Ryan looked at him for a long moment. How long did you wait before you ran? The boy's expression changed. Something moved across his face that was older than 8 years. Until I knew she wasn't going to get back up on her own. I didn't want to leave her, but I knew if I stayed, she'd still be on the floor in the morning. He looked down at Rex. So I ran. Ryan didn't have anything to say to that. He just nodded. Rex lifted his chin off his paws and put it back down directly on Lucas's knee, and the boy absently placed his hand on the dog's head, and neither of them moved. Patricia, the night nurse, came through the treatment room door, drying her hands on a towel. She looked at Ryan directly. She's asking for you." He got up and went in. Claire was sitting up in the bed, the bruising on her face darkening as the adrenaline left her system, making it look worse than it had in the shed. But her eye was clearer. She was tracking. She'd had enough time to think.
"I need to tell you something before whoever else shows up tonight," she said, before Ryan could speak. He sat in the chair beside her bed.
"I'm listening."
"There's a notebook. Small, black cover. Water-stained at the corner."
She held his gaze.
"Lucas's left sneaker. Inside the toe. I put it there 6 weeks ago when I was still deciding what to do." She paused. "It has names, dates, dollar amounts, and 2 cell phone numbers I copied from Dale's phone when he was sleeping. I didn't know who to give it to. I didn't know who was safe."
Ryan said nothing. He just waited.
"I'm giving it to you now," Claire said, "because a man who drives without headlights through a property where he doesn't know what's waiting for him, just to get a woman he's never met off a shed floor, is either very stupid or very honest." The corner of her mouth moved. "You don't seem stupid." Ryan stood. He walked to the waiting room. He crouched in front of Lucas, who looked up at him with wide eyes.
"Can I see your left shoe for a second?" Lucas blinked, then slowly reached down and pulled off his sneaker and handed it over without asking why. Ryan reached inside, felt along the toe, and found it. Small, black cover, water-stained at the corner. He opened it carefully. The first page had 11 names. The third name from the top was Captain Gerald Mercer. Below it, a dollar figure. Monthly. 12 months listed. The total was not a small number. Ryan closed the notebook. He looked at the ceiling for one long second. Then he looked at Lucas, who was watching him with the patient intensity of a child who had learned early that adults had a lot of complicated feelings they needed to work through before they could answer a simple question. "Your mom is really smart," Ryan said. Lucas nodded like this was not news. "I know. She said the same thing about me." From outside the clinic, headlights swept across the window. A county vehicle, marked, moving at purpose. Dana Howell had made good time. Ryan tucked the notebook into his breast pocket, buttoned it closed, and went to the door. Rex fell into step at his left without being called. Outside, the cold hit his face, and he welcomed it. Whatever was coming next, at least now he knew exactly who he was fighting. And he knew he wasn't fighting alone. Sheriff Dana Howell was not what Ryan had expected. She was somewhere in her mid-50s, compact and deliberate in the way she moved, with a kind of stillness that came from spending decades in rooms where saying the wrong thing cost people their lives. She shook Ryan's hand once, firm, and didn't let go immediately. She was reading him. He let her. "You said you didn't log the evidence through your station," she said. "Correct. And you haven't contacted anyone in your department since the shed?" "No, ma'am." She released his hand. "Good. Keep it that way." She looked at Rex, who was sitting at Ryan's heel watching her with polite but absolute attention. "Your dog find the cash?" "He found the floorboard. I found the cash." "Smart animal." She didn't say it as flattery. She said it the way you stated a fact that mattered to your planning. She turned to the investigator who had come with her, a lean man named Torres who carried a sealed evidence kit, and gave him instructions in a quiet voice before turning back to Ryan. "The notebook is enough to open a formal investigation into Mercer tonight. The physical evidence at the property needs to be secured before Voss moves it, which he will do the moment he realizes the shed has been compromised." She looked at Ryan steadily. "Which means I need someone who knows that property to go back out there with my team. Someone Voss doesn't know is already working against him." Ryan understood immediately. "He's seen my patrol car." "Did he see you?"
I don't think so.
Then you still have an advantage. She folded her arms. I'm not ordering you. You've already done more than your job required tonight. I'm asking. Ryan looked at Rex. Rex looked back at him with those amber eyes that had never once in 3 years suggested that caution was a reasonable position when something important needed doing. When do we leave? Dana almost smiled. Torres will take your statement here first. 40 minutes. Then you go back with 2 of my deputies. You stay outside the perimeter. You identify access points and egress routes. You let my people go in. She held his gaze. You are not the cavalry tonight. You are the guide. Understood? Understood. He spent the next 30 minutes with Torres, walking through everything from the moment Rex had gone rigid in the passenger seat on Route 9. Torres recorded it, documented the notebook page by page, bagged it with care. At one point, he looked up from the pages and said quietly, 11 names. You know what this means for your department? Yeah, Ryan said. I know. You doing all right with that? Ryan considered the question honestly. Ask me later. Before he left the clinic, he stopped in the waiting room. Lucas was asleep on the bench with his head on a folded jacket. Rex curled on the floor beside him. The dog opened one eye when Ryan crouched down, checked his partner's face, then closed it again. Satisfied. Ryan watched the boy sleep for a moment. The cut above his eye had been cleaned and butterfly-stitched by Patricia. In sleep, his face had released all the weight it had been carrying, and he looked exactly what he was. 8 years old. A child who had done something extraordinary and was now, finally, allowed to rest. Ryan stood. He went to the door. He drove back out toward the Voss property with 2 of Dana's deputies in an unmarked county vehicle. Headlights off again on the final approach. Rex sat in the back this time, silent, his breathing the only sound in the car. They parked at the tree line, and Ryan oriented the deputies from memory, pointing out the grain building, the shed, the 2 access roads, the blind spots. One of the deputies, a woman named Reyes, who spoke in short sentences and never wasted motion, studied the layout and said, "Second structure, you mentioned it. The one with the phones and the ledger. Where exactly?" Ryan thought back to what Claire had told him. North side of the grain building, attached lean-to. Used to be equipment room. Claire said Dale used it for communications equipment. Reyes nodded and started talking into her radio. That was when Ryan's phone vibrated. Unknown number. He answered it. Nothing on the line, just breathing. Then a small voice. "Officer Cole?" His blood went cold. "Lucas, how did you get this number?" "It was on the card you gave my mom. I found it in her coat pocket." A pause. "I'm outside." Ryan turned around slowly. "Outside where?" "Behind you, by the big tree with the broken branch." Ryan closed his eyes for 1 second. Then he turned and walked back toward the tree line, and there was Lucas Ward, standing in the dark in his navy parka, with his mother's scarf wrapped twice around his neck, and one sneaker on and one sneaker off because he had handed the other one to Ryan at the clinic, and apparently walked here in a mismatched pair he'd found somewhere. "How did you get here?" Ryan's voice came out quieter than he intended, because raising it felt wrong in the dark. "I followed the county road. I know where this property is." Lucas's chin came up. "I've been here before. There's a second shed nobody knows about. I was going to tell you earlier, but you left before I could." "What second shed?" "By the north wall. Dale used to send me to get things from it when he didn't want to go himself. I thought it was tools." But once the door blew open in the wind and I saw all the phones charging in there. Like 15 phones, all at once. Ryan stood very still.
He looked at Lucas. He looked at the tree line. He pulled out his radio and relayed the information to Reyes in 4 sentences. Her response came back fast. "That matches what we're seeing on the thermal. Get the boy out of here, Cole, now!" "Come on." Ryan put his hand on Lucas's shoulder and steered him back toward the county vehicle. "You gave us exactly what we needed. Now you're going back." Lucas went, but he didn't go quietly. "I just wanted to help." "You did help. You helped before you even left the clinic." Ryan opened the car door. "Get in." "Is my mom going to be mad?" "She's going to be terrified, and then she's going to be furious, and then she's going to hold you for approximately 4 years. He looked at the boy. "Yeah, she's going to be mad." Lucas got in the car. Ryan had his hand on the door to close it when Rex, who had been positioned at his left the entire time, suddenly went rigid. Every muscle locked, hackles up, not looking toward the property, looking to the right, along the tree line, at a section of dark that looked identical to every other section of dark. Ryan trusted that reaction absolutely. He pulled the door open again. "Get down, Lucas. On the floor. Don't move." "What is it?" "Down. Now." The boy dropped to the floor of the back seat without another word. Ryan moved away from the car, hand on his weapon, Rex moving with him in perfect synchrony. They went toward the tree line, angling wide, putting themselves between whatever Rex had sensed and the vehicle where Lucas was. 10 yards. 20. A figure stepped out from behind the brush. Heavy build, tan canvas jacket, the particular way of moving that belonged to a man accustomed to making other people feel physically small. Dale Voss looked at Ryan with an expression that had given up on surprise and landed somewhere past it, in the territory of cold calculation. "Officer," his voice was flat, "you are a long way from your jurisdiction." "Not tonight." Ryan kept his voice level. "Dale Voss, I'm placing you under arrest. Keep your hands where I can see them." Voss didn't move his hands. He looked at Ryan with the evaluating stare of a man running numbers. "You found the shed. You took my product." He tilted his head. "Who else knows you're here?" "Enough people." "Mercer doesn't know. If he knew, he would have called me." Voss's jaw worked. "So whoever you talked to went around him. Which means you've been working outside your department." He smiled slowly. "That's a serious problem for you, son." Rex growled, low, deep, and absolute. The sound rolled through the dark like a warning from something primal. Voss looked at the dog. The smile faded by 1 degree. "Last warning," Ryan said. "Hands up, now." What happened next took 4 seconds. Voss moved his right hand inside his jacket. Rex launched before Ryan could give the command. 90 pounds of muscle and training and 3 years of trust crossing the distance before the gun was clear of the jacket. The impact drove Voss back and down. Rex's teeth locked on his forearm, the gun firing wild into the air as they hit the ground. The shot cracked through the dark like a thunderclap. Ryan was on him in the next second. Knee on the man's chest, weapon trained, shouting the commands on pure instinct. "Drop it! Drop it! Don't move! Don't move!" Voss let go of the gun. Rex held on. "Rex, out!" The dog released and stepped back, breathing hard, positioning himself between Voss and the direction of the car. Ryan got the cuffs on Voss's wrists, with hands that were steadier than they had any right to be. From the direction of the property, Reyes and her partner were already moving toward them at a run, flashlights cutting the dark. The radio was alive with voices. Ryan stood up from the ground and looked at Rex. There was blood on the dog's flank. Not a graze this time. A dark patch spreading through the tan and black fur, just behind the left shoulder, where the wild shot had found something it was never meant to find. Ryan was on his knees next to Rex before the thought fully formed. Hey, "Hey, look at me!" He put both hands on the dog's face. Rex looked back at him, with those amber eyes, clear and steady and present, tail moving in a slow, deliberate arc through the frozen grass. Like he was trying to say, "I'm still here. Stop panicking. We've got work to do." "You're hit," Ryan said, his voice dropping to almost nothing. Rex licked his hand once, sat down carefully. From the car, a small voice cut through everything. Lucas had lifted his head above the seat, despite being told not to. When he saw Rex sitting in the dark, with Ryan's hands on his face, the boy was out of the car and running before Ryan could stop him. He dropped to his knees in the frozen grass beside the dog and wrapped both arms around Rex's neck, his face buried in the tan and black fur. Rex turned his head and rested his chin on the boy's shoulder. Reyes reached them, took one look at the dog, and was already calling for the vet on duty. Ryan stayed where he was, one hand on Rex, watching Voss being pulled to his feet and walked away by Reyes's partner. The man was shouting something about lawyers and about Mercer and about how nobody understood the size of what they'd just stepped into. Ryan didn't listen. He had heard everything he needed to hear tonight. He looked at the dog. He looked at the boy who had run barefoot through Montana winter to save his mother, and who was now sitting in frozen grass, holding a wounded German shepherd with a kind of fierce, wordless devotion that didn't ask permission or wait for instructions. Ryan put his hand on Lucas's back. "You were supposed to stay in the car," he said. Lucas didn't let go of Rex. "He saved me twice tonight. I wasn't going to stay in the car." Ryan had no answer for that. He just stayed where he was, the three of them in the dark, waiting for the lights that were already coming. The veterinary clinic was 12 minutes from the property. Ryan drove those 12 minutes like they were the last 12 minutes of something. Rex lying across the back seat with Lucas pressed against him, the boy's hand flat against the dog's side, feeling every breath rise and fall. Ryan watched them in the rearview mirror and kept his eyes on the road and didn't say anything because there was nothing to say that would matter more than getting there fast. Dr. Mara Finch met them at the side entrance. She was the only large animal vet within 40 miles of Harlow Creek, which meant she also handled every canine emergency the department had ever had, which, over the years, had given her a specific and serious relationship with Ryan and Rex. She took one look at the blood matting Rex's flank and said, "How long ago?" 20 minutes. "He conscious and tracking?" "Yes." "Then we're okay. Get him inside." Lucas didn't want to let go. Ryan crouched beside him in the back seat and said quietly, "She needs room to work. You'll be right outside the door. He knows you're there." The boy looked at Rex. Rex looked at the boy with those steady amber eyes, and his tail moved once, deliberate and slow, the same way it always moved when he was telling his partner something was going to be all right. Lucas let go. Ryan carried Rex inside and set him on the table, and stepped back and let Mara do what she did. He stood against the wall with his arms crossed and watched. Lucas sat on the bench in the hallway directly outside the door, with his face at the small window, his breath fogging the glass. Mara worked without narrating. That was one of the things Ryan had always respected about her. She didn't fill silence with reassurance. She filled it with competence. 20 minutes in, she said, without looking up, "Bullet didn't hit anything critical. Went through muscle, exited clean. He's going to need stitches and rest, and he's going to be furious about the rest part." Ryan exhaled for what felt like the first time since the tree line. "He's going to be okay?" he asked. "He's going to be fine." She glanced up briefly. "You, on the other hand, look like you've been run over twice." "Just once," Ryan said. "Tonight's not over yet." She gave him a long look. Then she went back to work. When she finished and Rex was resting on the padded recovery surface with a clean bandage and the particular dignified expression of a dog who had been through worse and knew it. Ryan went to the hallway and sat beside Lucas. The boy was still watching through the window. "He's okay," Ryan said. Lucas didn't move for a moment. Then his shoulders came down from somewhere near his ears, and he put his face in his hands and cried. Not the panicked crying from Route 9. Something quieter. The kind of crying that only comes when the danger is over and the body finally allows itself to feel what it was protecting you from feeling while you needed to function. Ryan sat with him. He didn't tell him to stop. He didn't tell him it was okay. He just stayed there, which was sometimes the only thing that was actually useful. After a while, Lucas wiped his face on his sleeve. "Sorry." "Don't be." "I thought he was going to die because of me." "He didn't go into that tree line because of you," Ryan said. "He went because Voss was there, and Voss was a threat. Rex made that call himself." He looked at the window. "He's been making calls like that his whole career. This one just cost him more than usual." Lucas thought about that. "Were you scared when you saw the blood?" Ryan considered whether to answer honestly. He decided Lucas had earned honesty. "Yeah, more than I was at the shed. More than I was when Voss pulled the gun." He looked at the boy. "You know why?" Lucas shook his head. "Because I can handle being in danger myself. That's the job. But watching someone you rely on get hurt because they were standing next to you?" He paused. "That one hits different." Lucas was quiet for a moment. "That's how I felt when I found my mom on the floor." Ryan looked at him. "I wasn't scared for me," Lucas said. "I was scared because she was hurt, and it was my fault for not calling sooner, and I didn't know how to fix it, so I just ran." He stared at his hands. "I keep thinking if I had run earlier, she wouldn't have been hurt as bad." "Listen to me." Ryan waited until the boy looked at him. "You were 8 years old in a situation that most grown adults would have frozen in completely. You made a decision, you executed it, and you saved her life. That is not a story about what you did wrong. That is a story about what you did right." He held the boy's gaze. "You understand me?" Lucas nodded slowly. Then, after a moment, "You sound like you're trying to convince yourself, too." Ryan opened his mouth, closed it. Then he said, "Yeah, maybe a little." Lucas almost smiled. It was the first time Ryan had seen anything close to a smile on the boy's face since Route 9, and it landed somewhere in his chest with a weight he hadn't expected. His phone rang. Dana Howell. He stepped a few feet down the hallway. "Howell, we've secured the property, both structures. The lean-to had what your witness described: communications equipment, burner phones, and a ledger that matches the notebook entries almost line for line." Her voice was measured and precise. "We also found documentation connecting 3 county officials to the checkpoint authorization scheme. The contracts were structured specifically to avoid audit triggers. This was sophisticated, Cole. This wasn't a local operation with a lucky break. This was organized." "How high does it go?" "High enough that I've already made 2 calls to the state level tonight." A pause. "Mercer has been placed on administrative suspension pending investigation. He was notified an hour ago." Ryan leaned against the wall. "How did he take it?" "He asked for his attorney, which tells you everything you need to know about whether he's surprised." Another pause. "You did good work tonight. Exceptionally good work, given that you were operating without department support and without certainty about who you could trust." "I had Rex." "I noticed." Her voice shifted slightly. "The dog is going to be all right?" "Vet says so." "Good. Because the report I'm going to have to write about tonight is going to require that dog to be available for commendation." A beat. Get some rest, Cole. We're going to need your statement again tomorrow. Detailed. And you need to be sharp for it." She hung up. Ryan stood in the hallway for a moment with the phone in his hand. Then he went back to Lucas, who had moved to the doorway of the recovery room and was watching Rex sleep from just inside the threshold. "News?" the boy asked without turning around. "They got everyone.
Property secured. Evidence is locked." Ryan stood beside him. "It's over." Lucas exhaled. "My mom's notebook. Did it help?" "It was the center of the whole case. Without it, half those names would have taken months to connect." Ryan looked at the boy. "Where did she hide it again?" "In my shoe." Lucas looked faintly indignant. "She said it was the safest place because nobody ever thinks about checking a kid's sneaker." "She was right." "She's usually right." He watched Rex breathe. "She just makes bad decisions about people sometimes. About who she thinks she can fix." His voice went quiet. "She thought Dale could be better than he was. She really believed it for a while." "I know." "Is that stupid?" Ryan thought about it. "No, believing people can change is not stupid. Being willing to leave when it's clear they won't, that's the hard part. Your mom figured out the hard part." He paused. "That's why she made the notebook. She was already planning her way out. She just needed the right moment. Lucas absorbed that. So she wasn't just a victim. She was never just a victim. Ryan said it firmly. She was someone in a dangerous situation who was protecting her son and building a case at the same time. That's not weakness. That's strategy. The boy nodded slowly, like something was settling into place. They went back to the main clinic together at close to 3 in the morning. Claire was awake, sitting up in bed with the overhead light dimmed and the cup of tea going cold on the tray beside her. When Lucas walked through the door, she opened her arms and he went into them without a word, and she held him for a long time with her eyes closed. Ryan stood near the door. Claire opened her eyes and looked at him over her son's head. There was something in her face he didn't know how to name exactly. Gratitude was part of it. But there was also the particular expression of a person who has been carrying something alone for so long that being relieved of it feels almost physical. Like setting down something heavy that had changed the shape of your shoulders. "They got him," Ryan said quietly. She nodded. She already knew. Something in the way she was holding Lucas told him she had known for a while. Maybe since she handed him the notebook at her bedside. Like she had made a bet and was waiting to find out if it had paid. "All of them?" she asked. "All of them, including Mercer." She closed her eyes briefly, opened them. "I didn't know his first name. I only ever heard the last name." "It's Gerald," Ryan said. "He's been in the department 19 years. "And he was going to let Dale kill me to protect himself?" Ryan didn't soften it. "Yes." Claire looked at Lucas, who had fallen asleep against her shoulder in the particular sudden way that children did when their bodies finally won the argument against their determination to stay awake. She pulled the blanket over him carefully. "I want to press full charges," she said quietly. "Everything. Every count. I want to sit in that courtroom, and I want Lucas to know that I did it." She met Ryan's eyes. "I need him to know that his mother finished what she started. I'll make sure the county prosecutor has your contact the moment you're discharged." She nodded. Then she looked at him with the direct and unsentimental gaze of a woman who had been through enough to recognize something real when she saw it. "You drove out there without backup because you didn't know who to trust. That could have gone very differently." "It almost did," he said honestly. "But it didn't." She glanced at the door, toward the vet clinic somewhere down the street. "How's your dog?" "He's going to be fine. Vet cleared him." "Good." She settled back against the pillow, careful of her ribs. He's the reason Lucas isn't still standing on Route 9, waiting for someone else to stop. She paused. I saw the way that dog sat with my boy. In the car. In the waiting room. She shook her head slightly. Animals know things about people that people don't know about themselves. Ryan looked at his hands. He thought about Rex lying across the recovery table with a feather pendant that wasn't there, because this wasn't that story. And then he thought about how every story like this one had the same heart underneath, regardless of the names. A person alone. A child running. A dog that refused to leave. Get some rest, he said. She was almost asleep before he reached the door.
He walked back down the hallway, past the front desk where Patricia was filling out forms, past the waiting room where a single lamp burned against the dark, and out into the cold Montana air. He stood outside the clinic and breathed it in. The storm had completely passed. The sky above Harlow Creek was clear and enormous, stars sharp and cold in every direction. His radio crackled. Reyes, checking in from the property. All secure. Deputies on site until morning. Evidence team inbound from the state at first light. He acknowledged it and clipped the radio back on his belt. He stood there one more minute. Just him and the dark and the stars and the sound of a town that had no idea yet what had happened inside it tonight. What had been cut out of its foundation while it slept. What had been planted in its place. Then he went back inside to sit with Rex. Because some things you didn't leave alone. And Ryan Cole had figured out a long time ago that Rex was one of them. Rex came home on a Tuesday. Not home to the kennel facility where department dogs were officially housed between shifts, but home to Ryan's apartment on the second floor of a building on Callaway Street. Because Mara Finch had looked Ryan in the eye when she discharged the dog and said, "He needs quiet and familiarity and someone he trusts within arm's reach for the next 6 weeks." And Ryan had nodded and taken Rex's lead without another word. Because there had never been any other option. Rex walked into the apartment with the careful dignity of a dog managing pain he refused to advertise. He found his spot beside the couch, turned twice, and lay down with a long exhale that sounded like a man setting down a very heavy bag after a very long trip. Ryan sat on the floor beside him and didn't move for a while. The apartment was quiet. Outside, Harlow Creek was doing what small towns did in the aftermath of something large. Talking. Processing. Cycling through shock and anger and the particular discomfort of realizing that the machinery of corruption had been running directly beneath their feet for years, and they hadn't felt it. The local paper had run the story on the front page with Mercer's name and photograph. 3 county officials had resigned within 48 hours of the indictments. The Federal Drug Enforcement Office had opened a parallel investigation into the distribution network that extended well beyond Harlow Creek. Following the supply chain, Ryan's evidence had cracked open at the seam. Ryan read none of it. He already knew the facts. What he needed was to sit on his floor with his dog and let his nervous system understand that they had both survived. Rex snored once, softly. Ryan put his hand on the dog's back and felt him breathe. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that turned out to be Lucas, using his mother's phone. It said only, "He okay?" Ryan typed back, "Sleeping. He's good." 3 seconds later, "Good. Mom says hi." Ryan set the phone down and almost smiled. He went to see them 2 days later. Claire had been discharged from the clinic the morning after the arrest, released with pain medication for her ribs, and a follow-up appointment and a business card from the County Victim Services Office that she held in both hands like it was something fragile. Lucas had been beside her for every step of the discharge process, carrying her bag, holding doors, watching every person who came near her
with the calm, assessing attention of someone who had learned the hard way that danger didn't always announce itself. They were staying temporarily at a guest house on the east side of town, arranged by Dana Howell's office. Ryan knocked on the door, and Claire answered it and looked at him for a moment before stepping back to let him in. She moved carefully, protecting her ribs, but her eyes were clear, and she stood straight in a way she hadn't managed in the clinic. "You look better," he said. "I feel better." She said it like it surprised her slightly. "I keep waiting for that to stop being true." "Does it?" She considered. "Not yet." She turned toward the small kitchen. "Coffee?" "Please." Lucas appeared from the back room, assessed the situation in one sweep, and went directly to the point. "Where's Rex?" "Resting at home. Vet's orders." The boy's face did something complicated. "I want to see him." "You will. Give him a few more days." Lucas sat at the kitchen table and folded his arms on the surface and rested his chin on them, a posture that communicated profound patience being exercised under significant protest. "A few more days is a long time." "It's actually not," Ryan said. "But it feels like it. I know." Claire set a mug in front of him and sat across the table. For a moment, the three of them occupied the same space in the particular comfortable silence that only existed between people who had been through something real together and no longer needed to perform normalcy for each other. "Dana Howell called this morning," Claire said. Ryan looked up. "She wanted to know if I'd be willing to give a formal victim impact statement for the federal case, not just the local charges." Claire wrapped both hands around her mug. "She said my testimony, combined with a notebook, would be critical for connecting Mercer to the larger operation. Not just the county contracts, the actual distribution authorization." "What did you tell her?" "I told her yes." She said it without hesitation. "I told her I'd been quiet for 2 years, and I was done being quiet." She looked at Ryan steadily. "She also said you recommended me for victim services advocacy training, that there's a position opening in the county office." Ryan had made that call without mentioning it to her, and for a half second he wondered if he had overstepped. Then he read her expression and understood he hadn't. "You don't have to take it," he said. "I know I don't have to." She almost smiled. "That's exactly why I'm going to." Lucas lifted his head from his arms. "Does that mean we're staying in Harlow Creek?" Claire looked at her son. Something moved across her face that Ryan recognized. The specific expression of a parent making a decision in real time about how much truth a child was ready to hold. She apparently decided Lucas had already proven he could hold quite a lot. "It means we're not running," she said. "This is our town, too. We're not leaving it to the people who tried to take it from us." Lucas absorbed that. Then he nodded once, the same firm, decisive nod Ryan had seen him give on Route 9 before he ran into the dark. "Okay," the boy said. "Good." 3 weeks later, the county sheriff's office held a formal commendation ceremony. It was not a large event. A conference room, folding chairs, the kind of coffee that came from a machine in the hallway. Dana Howell stood at the front in her dress uniform and read from a document in her precise, unhurried voice. And what she read was the sequence of decisions Ryan Cole had made from the moment he stopped his patrol car on Route 9 through the moment Dale Voss was in handcuffs at the tree line. And the way she said it made the decisions sound both exceptional and inevitable, the way truly good police work always did in retrospect. Ryan sat in the front row in his dress uniform, with Rex beside him, the dog wearing his working harness for the first time since the injury. Rex sat completely still through the reading, with the professional composure of an animal who understood ceremony, even if he found it somewhat unnecessary. Behind Ryan, in the second row, sat Claire and Lucas. Lucas was wearing a collared shirt that was slightly too large for him, and he had combed his hair with an effort that was visible and touching. Claire had her hand on his shoulder. When Dana finished reading, she looked at Ryan. "Officer Cole,
Would you like to say anything?" Ryan stood. He looked at the room, which contained about 20 people, deputies and county officials, and 2 representatives from the State Drug Enforcement Office. He thought about what he wanted to say, and then said the truest version of it, which was shorter than anything he had prepared. "I want to say that the person who broke this case open was an 8-year-old boy who ran barefoot through frozen woods in the dark because he refused to leave his mother alone." He paused. "I want to say that the evidence that brought down 11 people in 2 counties was assembled by a woman who was afraid every single day for 2 years and kept going anyway." He looked at Dana. "I want to say that I had a partner with me every step of the way, who never once asked whether the situation was safe before deciding to act." He looked down at Rex. "I'm proud of the police work, but the courage in this story didn't start with me." He sat down. Lucas leaned forward from the second row and said, at a volume that was technically a whisper, but was not actually a whisper, "That was really good." Claire put her hand over her son's mouth. Several people in the room laughed. Even Dana Howell's expression shifted in the direction of a smile. After the ceremony, in the hallway outside, Lucas crouched in front of Rex and held out his hand the way Ryan had taught him, letting the dog come to him rather than reaching. Rex stepped forward and pressed his nose against the boy's palm, and then leaned his entire head against Lucas's chest with a slow, deliberate exhale. "He remembers me," Lucas said quietly. "He never forgot you," Ryan said. Lucas wrapped both arms carefully around the dog's neck, mindful of the shoulder, and held on for a moment. Rex stood completely still and let him. Claire watched them from a few feet away. When she looked at Ryan, her eyes were bright, but her jaw was set, and she was not going to cry in a county government hallway, and Ryan respected that enormously. "He's going to want to visit him," she said. "I know. Is that all right?" "Claire," Ryan looked at her. "That dog sat with your son in a patrol car in February and decided that boy was worth protecting before he even knew the whole story. You think he's going to object to visits?" She laughed. It was the first time he had heard her laugh without restraint, without the particular guardedness that pain installed in a person, and it changed her face completely. Made her look younger. Made her look like someone who had gotten something back that had been taken from her. 6 weeks after the commendation, Rex was officially cleared for full active duty. Mara Finch signed the paperwork on a Friday morning and handed it to Ryan across the examination table, where Rex sat with the tolerant dignity of a dog who had endured enough veterinary appointments to have strong opinions about them. Mara ran her hand along the healed shoulder one more time and nodded. "Clean," she said. "Full range of motion. No compensation in the gait." She looked at Rex. "You're a remarkable animal." Rex blinked at her. His tail moved once. "He knows," Ryan said. "Of course he knows." She handed over the clearance form. "Don't get him shot again. I'll pass that note to the criminals." She pointed at the door. Ryan clipped Rex's working harness on in the parking lot, and the moment the buckle clicked into place, the dog's entire posture changed. Shoulders back, head up. That particular attentive readiness that was different from every other mood Rex operated in. The harness meant work. Work meant purpose. Purpose was what Rex was made for. Ryan crouched in front of him and held the dog's face in both hands the way he had in the tree line the night Voss went down, when his hands had been shaking and Rex had been bleeding and the amber eyes had looked back at him with a steadiness that had no business being as calming as it was. "You ready?" Ryan asked. Rex held his gaze. "Yeah." Ryan stood. "Me too." They got in the patrol car. Ryan pulled out of the lot onto the main road through Harlow Creek, the morning light coming in at an angle across the dash. Rex in the passenger seat, with his nose lifted slightly to whatever the ventilation system was carrying from outside. A town of 3,000 people going about their Tuesday. A diner opening its doors. A school bus making its first run. A county road crew filling a pothole on the north end where the frost heave had cracked the asphalt over winter. Normal. Quiet. The specific, ordinary, hard-won peace of a place that had fought for its own decency and won. Ryan's radio crackled. "Dispatch, routine," he acknowledged. Beside him, Rex settled back in the seat, alert but unhurried, amber eyes moving steadily across the road ahead. There would be more nights like that February night. Ryan knew that, without illusion or comfort. There would be more dark roads and more people who used their positions to hollow out the institutions meant to protect ordinary lives. There would be more moments when the right choice and the safe choice were not the same choice, and someone would have to decide which one they were willing to live with. But there would also be boys brave enough to run when running was the only option. There would be women who built their evidence in secret and waited for the right moment with a patience that looked like surrender, but was actually strategy. There would be people like Dana Howell, who answered the phone at 11:30 at night and said, "Talk to me," without needing to know first whether it was going to be convenient. And there would be a German shepherd with amber eyes and a healed shoulder and a working harness, who had never once, in 3 years of partnership, made Ryan Cole feel like he was doing any of this alone. Ryan drove. Rex watched the road. Harlow Creek moved around them, ordinary and alive, and still standing. That was enough. That was everything.